All right, well, welcome to this last video that we're going to put on in preparation for a congregational meeting coming up on March 20th. And we've been talking about our philosophy, welcome home, and our campus possibilities, and then also the Peterson bequest. And this week I have John Ryan, our church president, with me, as we're going to talk a little bit about the constitutional revisions that have been proposed for this upcoming meeting. John, tell me about why we're going to revise or proposing to revise the Constitution.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of issues that came up and we've been aware of, and so we thought that we ought to take a look at the Constitution. And so one of them you asked for, and another one has been a clarification that we've been thinking about for some time. So we opened up the Constitution and started looking at what it would take to make those changes. And I started doing that and sort of had two thoughts in mind. One was maybe just don't touch anything I don't have to touch.
Yeah.
Just make those changes clean and simple and nothing else. And as I got looking into the Constitution, I went through it carefully, and you realize that it might be worth taking a broader look at different things that might need some revisions or corrections, and so did come up with a few things. And so we took that approach to looking at the Constitution and came up with a revision that we want to present to the congregation.
Yeah, really there's kind of two sections. One area where there's maybe some revisions that aren't of much substance. Can you say more about those? You went through a fine-tooth comb through that Constitution along with a few others.
Yeah, I did. And there were a number of typos, probably 8 or 10 basically typos. One place there was a period that should have been a semicolon, so it's at that level. And there were a couple of things that belonged in a different, slightly different order or different section. So just going through things like that, I think made it a little clearer.
Yeah, that's just a
didn't
cleaning
have a
up.
big impact on the document itself, but it was a cleanup kind of a
Sure.
thing.
But then there's about 3 kind of substantive changes or revisions that we're proposing. One of them, like you said, is something that I've asked for and have considered for some time here at Trinity. It has to do with the church council.
Yeah.
Can you say about that
Yeah.
revision?
Yeah, that it has to do with the term limits of the church council, and the current term limits for the council is that each council member is elected for a 1-year term, and they can be elected 3 times at most. And so that's 1-year term we felt was a little bit short.
Yeah.
Usually people serve more than just the 1 year, but we felt that it was better. You have felt that it's better to have a longer commitment for and the ability to kind of have a more continuous impact on the council. Sometimes the first year or 2 are spent kind of getting acclimated, and then all of a sudden you're done. So what we have decided to do is to change the term limits to instead of electing members for a 1-year term, elect them for a 3-year term, and allow them to serve 2 consecutive 3-year terms as a limit. So that would be a total of 6 years for a member. I think that allows a more continuous service and better use of the wisdom gained earlier in your term, and so it can be more effective counsel in general.
Yeah. The second substantive change has to do with a confusing point that has been in the Constitution. Can you say more about that? This one maybe is a little confusing even to communicate, but we're hoping for clarity here.
Yeah. It's something that we've been referring to in general as the $200 spending limit for the council. And when we took a look carefully at what the current Constitution actually says, it says that there's the council shall not dispose of the congregation's property or fund a loan for more than $200 without congregational approval. And so that's been interpreted as a spending limit, but so we decided that it was be good to clarify that.
Yeah.
And so we think the real issue is having to do with buying or selling real estate or encumbering the congregation with a long-term loan without their approval. And so we decided to clarify that basically along those lines.
Yeah, and I know the first track we were on to was to say, well, what would $200 from, I think we look back even to the 1950s, and
Yeah.
the Constitution back there had the same
Right.
number, $200, and we thought, what would $200 from the 1950s be today? But then we just thought, you know what? If we're bringing the congregation into encumbering them with debt of some kind, or buying or selling real estate, they should always have
Right.
a say
Right.
in that. So it's really, I think, clarifying that expenditure. So thank you for that. Last one has to do with the nominating committee.
Right, right. So the nominating committee, of course, nominates candidates for the church council, and the current constitution has quite a detailed section on the nominating committee in terms of kind of all the details of the process that nominating committee needs to go through to bring the candidates to the congregational meeting, and a little, I thought, more detail than really it belongs in a constitutional level document. It also was in a section of the document that it didn't really belong, because it's really nominating council members.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, it didn't even say what they nominate, which is council members.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did was we removed some of the detail and just clarified it at a higher level,
Mm-hmm.
and moved it into the section or the article about the church council and its duties and its procedures. And so the nominating committee has moved into that article and taken, into Article 9 out of Article 10.
So just some clarity and definition really to their role, and then putting it in the place in the Constitution where it fits best.
Right, right. Oh, and I forgot, also, there were no term limits for the nominating committee. We decided that they ought to probably have the same limits as the council does, and so we added that as well. So nominating committee is elected for a 3-year term, and at most a member can serve for 2 terms, so 6 years total. Before, there was no limits at all.
And a basic summary of these substantive changes have been sent out to the voting members of
Right.
Trinity and are available in the church office if
Right.
anybody didn't get it and would like to see it. But also the full original or current Constitution, as well as the proposed Constitution, is also available in the church council for those who'd like to see it. Simply ask one of the 10 secretaries who work in here throughout the week to see those documents if you'd like to, in preparation for that March 20th meeting coming up. Maybe last question, John, is what do we hope to accomplish through this revision?
Yeah, good question. Really, the idea is to have a more clear, understandable document,
Mm-hmm.
and make some corrections that we think have kind of been long overdue, and have a constitution that's served us well for a long time,
Yeah.
and will serve us now even better in the long run.
Yeah. Well, thank you, John. Thanks for the work you put into this, and we are praying together for
Yeah.
God's favor on that congregational meeting coming up on March 20th.
My pleasure.